When I get you back, oh yeah. When I get you back, oh yeah. When I get you back, oh yeah. I promise you'll never leave me. When it comes to you and me, there's no one else I'd rather be with. Baby, I won't let you down. I got it, I know you need it. Love is it when you're around. Oh, please say that you believe it. 'Cause I don't wanna lose you. I hope you feel that way too. No, I don't wanna lose you. Baby, don't go. Don't go. When I get you back, oh yeah. When I get you back, oh yeah. When I get you back, oh yeah. Oh, when I get you back, oh yeah. Cause I don't wanna lose you. I hope you feel that way too. No, I don't wanna lose you. Baby, don't go. Oh, when I get you back, oh yeah. I promise you'll never leave me. When it comes to you and me, there's no one else I'd rather be with. When I get you back, oh yeah. Oh. When I get you back, oh yeah. When I get you back, oh yeah. Oh, when I get you back, oh yeah.
Hello, welcome, welcome. Where we at? Where we at? Where am I? I don't see myself. What's going on? What's going on, people? Hold on, we are live real quick. I know what's going on. I got that on right there. That's what was going on. Welcome to Black and Blue Live, everybody. This is Black and Blue Street Life. I am your host, Dale. If you don't know me already, let me pull up my name there. Boom. My name is Dale. I am the host and co-founder of Black and Blue podcast. Black and Blue Street Life is where I take the podcast out from the studio, out here on the streets. And right now, I am live coming to you right now from the beautiful city of Riverside, California. Looking at the backdrop there, you won't see it yet, but I'm coming from the grounds of the Riverside County Historic Courthouse, and you'll see everything there. Also, Black and Blue fam, I wanted to show you guys, tell you guys, hey, happy Halloween, right? Today's Halloween. Right now, we're not trick-or-treating, but we'll get to the trick-or-treating after we get to this conversation, because we got some real life horror stories to talk about with some people who lived it and investigated it. And I'm talking about two investigators from two big agencies out here in California, and we'll bring those in. But before I do that, let me show you guys my handles. We are live right now on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on LinkedIn. So send in your comments and questions, and we will get to them. And without further ado, let me bring on our guest. So our first guest here, he was a investigator with the LAPD, Los Angeles Police Department out here in California, a homicide investigator. Everybody, please help me welcome in Mr. Maurice Landrum. How you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great, Joe. How about yourself?
I'm great, man. Great, man. Thank you for coming on with us. Absolutely. There's a little fanfare there for you. So you worked for LAPD. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself real quick, and then we'll move on to our other guests.
Okay, yeah. I started my career at LAPD in May of 1983. Worked with different variety of different situations and assignments. I ended up going to South Shore Homicide, which is LAPD's busiest homicide squad. And from there, I promoted out to sergeant. I came back to Homicide, the FBI task force, and I worked that for a while, and was able to arrest a prolific serial murder. And then from there, I went to South Traffic, and as an assistant watch commander, and I retired from there for a weekend. And then I didn't get enough, so then I went out to the San Bernardino County District Attorney's Office Bureau of Investigation, and I worked there where I promoted to the rank of supervisor and DA investigator.
All right. Well, I appreciate you for coming on to the show with me here today, because everything. There we go. Yes, let me bring down your tag there. I appreciate you coming on, sir, and we're gonna share some stories about everything that you did there at LAPD Homicide. But not to be remiss, our next guest here. He also worked homicide, but with a different agency, a rival agency, friendly rivalry, we'll say that, with the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, also in LA County. Everybody, please help me welcome in Mr. Frederick Reynolds. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
You got it, man. You got it. Thanks for joining us. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you did there with LAPD.
I worked for the Compton Police Department. That's where I started my career in 1985. I worked there until 2000, and in 2000, the Sheriff's Department took over the city of Compton. And I went to the Sheriff's Department and worked there from 2000 until 2017. I worked homicide and gang units in both agencies for the majority of my career, and I retired from the Sheriff's Department in 2017 after working homicide for 5 years.
Okay. Yeah, if you guys are hearing some feedback on the audio, that's because we're live, ladies and gentlemen. So, I mean, it is what it is, and we'll try to get those worked out. But let me bring on our guest right here. This is all of us. Again, if you can bring in your comments, we will get those on as soon as we can. But we're here to talk about homicide. Like I said, homicide is something that is kind of trivialized in our media today. When you see it with our serial killers, Michael and Jason. And all those guys, right? But you guys actually did the investigating of those crimes, so we want to talk about that today. We'll start with you, Maurice. How many years did you actually investigate homicides?
I worked homicide unit for 3 years.
Okay, all right. And then you, Fred, how long did you?
All told, probably 15.
15. Okay. You know what? We are getting some real audio feedback. I'm going to fix that, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that. You can hear me clear. Now we can hear you guys. Whoop. All right, that sounds good now. That's what we'll do. All right. All right, so you did, how long? I'm sorry, I was trying
All
to...
told, 15 years
Oh, wow,
between the two agencies.
Yeah, between two agencies. So everybody, you started at Compton PD, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then you went over to the Sheriff's Department. What was that transition like for you?
It was difficult. Anytime you come from a small agency to a larger agency, it's real eye-opening because the resources, the number of personnel that you have to get used to working with it's quite an eye-opener. So it was rough.
Right, no doubt. And then you went over to the Sheriff's Department. Where'd you go from there, from when you first started at the Sheriff's Department?
When I first started at the Sheriff's Department, I was a sergeant at Compton PD, so I went over to the Sheriff's Department as a sergeant as well. And I worked for a little small station called Lamita for about a year, and then I went to the gang unit, and then I worked the gang unit and homicide for the next 17 years.
Nice. Well, I appreciate your service there. We'll talk about some cases over there. And then, so Maurice, so you worked some sort of homicides in your career. What sort of homicides did you work? What division were you in, first of all? Were you in robbery homicide? Were you street detective or store detective, as they call it? Working at a house there?
South Bureau homicide, so that's South Bureau, so it's centralized. And so we cover Southwest Division, Southeast Division, 77, and Harbor Division.
Okay. Hey guys, do me a favor real quick. Take those transmitters that are in your pocket. Take them out. No, not the one in the lapel, but yeah. Okay, yours is out. Yeah, maybe that's the okay. Yeah, maybe we can get some better connection there. All right, that sounds better there. Okay. So, what sort of training is involved with homicide detective?
Okay,
you
so
don't just roll right into it, right?
Yeah, so the best way to describe it is on-the-job training, and then I went to detective and homicide school.
Okay. How long was those schools?
40 hours
40
each.
hours?
Yeah.
What sort of stuff do you learn there?
Well, learn the basics for how to investigate a homicide, regarding crime scenes, interrogating suspects, interviewing witnesses, gathering evidence, evaluating that evidence, completing arrest reports, and just search warrants and and other things like that.
Yeah, no doubt. Same thing for you, Fred?
Yeah, it's on-the-job training. I probably went to the same 40-hour training course that he went to because the Sheriff's Department and LAPD they put it on together.
Okay. All right. So, did you guys know each other before?
No, we were just talking before we went on the air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, and real quick, I want to get into this because we were talking about the friendly little rivalry between LAPD and LASD. What are some stories you guys can tell us real quick, just between us? Nobody else is listening, right? About the little rivalry.
Well, he mentioned he worked Lamita, and he probably wasn't there when I was working at Harbor Division because it was back in 1983.
Yeah.
But we had a homicide right on the border, and there was a beach cruiser and expended casings on the sheriff's side of the street, and then in the middle of the street, and just on our side was the body, and you can see little drag marks. So when we pulled up, the sheriff says, "Hey, this is yours," and I go, "Not so much." I go, "You got expended casings on your side, so the shooter is on your side. The decedent's bike is on the curb on your side, so it's yours." So it was pretty funny. So I don't kill him too much because I'm married to a deputy.
Oh, wow! You crossed party lines there.
Yeah.
Man, shots fired for real. I know you got a story or two, Freddie.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly identify with that because when I worked at Compton Police Department, it bordered Long Beach, the city of Long Beach, and Long Beach has their own police department, and we had the same situation.
Yeah.
Where Long Beach dragged the body across the street and tried to give it to us, and we standing in the middle of the street arguing over a dead body as who's going to investigate it. So
yes.
yeah, definitely know what he's talking
Yes.
about.
All you law enforcement people out there, I'm sure you guys all have the same experiences. My agency, we border another agency. I'm not going to say names right now, but we've had those issues, and we actually have to bring out the maps to see whose line it is. Because some of these
Right.
unincorporated areas, you got to say, no, this is yours. No, this is yours. Especially when you get in the rural areas where there's canyons, there's windy canyons, and you got to say, okay, no, our area starts here, but it ended there. So it started on your side of the street, but happens everywhere. But in the end, we work it out, and a lot of times we just work it out together and try to solve the case together. So yeah, I appreciate that. I love those stories. So why don't you guys tell me about a particularly challenging case, homicide case that you guys had to work in your career?
Okay, you want to start, Fred?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I was assigned to homicide. It was the last day of the riots, and we had a 15-year-old female by the name of Michelle Helfert that they discovered at 98th and Broadway in the alley. So we pulled up there, and we look at the crime scene. She's in the alley, and that's when they had the dusk to dark curfew, dusk to dawn. In any event, she was laying out there. She had been shot 7 times, and she was partially dressed. So while I'm sitting there taking my notes, and we're looking for interviewing people who campus in the area, a little girl says, "You looking for where that lady lives?" And I go, "Yeah." She says, "She lives down the street." So I go down to 98th Street. I go to 117 East 98th Street, knock on the door. Female answers the door, and I says, "Hey, listen, I'm Detective Landry from Southbury Homicide. We're investigating a homicide. Some people told me that there's a person that live here that you may know, and I want to show you a picture." So I showed the headshot of the decedent, and she said, "Oh, that's Michelle." And so little did I know that day, 2 of the murder suspects were in the next yard looking at me. The third suspect walked up, and Patty, who was the witch, says, "Hey, have you seen Michelle?" He says, "Hey, last time I saw Michelle was at 7 o'clock the night before. She gave me a cigarette and I went home." Okay. So we started investigating it. We started comparing notes from the canvas. So we had some other group of detectives that went over to 97th Street, and there was a window that faced the alley. So a witness there says that she saw 3 suspects, which is what happened. And she says that they were from Carnalis, and they had CXL on their neck. So we started running that down. We contacted our gang unit, and went to Cal Gangs, and we pulled up the roster. So we saw that they had 2 male blacks in the group. So we started working that lead. That ended up taking us to Kansas. We ended up getting a witness who last name was Greco. And so he was also a member of Carnalis. So while we were on our investigative travel,
Now, Carnalis is a street gang.
a street gang.
Okay.
Yeah, Hispanic street gang, which stands for brothers. So anyway, while we're in Kansas investigating that, Greco gets shot and killed in an unrelated drive-by at 99th and Normandy. So we get back. We determined that the person in Kansas is not our suspect. He didn't have CXL in his neck. We get back. We go to the internment site, which is in County's area. So we're sitting there in a van taking pictures with our scientific investigation division. And while we're doing that, we see Greco, the uncle of the decedent, he's a Los Angeles police officer, and he was assigned to Harbor Division. And so we were there doing dignitary protection as we're doing surveillance. And so I was telling my partner, I said, "Hey man, if these guys break out, then we got to get out this van and take care of business." So we ended up calling the sheriff's department because the gangsters were all strapped, had guns and everything. So we called that in, and we ended up getting those guys. So my murder case is still going, so now it's like day 59. So if you don't solve a murder in 60 days, it's a penalty paper. You got to do a 60-dayer. It's a big long report.
Okay.
So I get a call from a former Los Angeles police explorer, and the explorer says, "Hey," it says, "I know about this murder that my client told me about." Said her daughter knows who did it. Well, her daughter's Patty. So I remember driving back out to the house, knock on the door, tell Patty, I go, hey, Patty, I know that you know, now that I know, you know who killed Michelle.
Right.
I said, this is how this works. I said, you can come down to the station and you can interview with me and tell me who did it, or I'm gonna get a warrant for your arrest for conspiracy and I'm gonna book you. So she says, well, can I get my baby? So she grabs her baby, and I call this my Happy Meal murder. Because what I did is I went to McDonald's, brought her son a Happy Meal, and she told me everything.
Yeah.
So it turns out that they were playing spin the bottle, and Michelle, she was down to her panties and her bra. So the guy's Chavo, he spent the bottle to a guy named Smokey, and then Pirate. So he says, hey, I want you to go in the room, and I want you to, to jack off Pirate. So Michelle was intrigued by that. So when she went in the room, what they really did is they raped her. Then they ended up shooting her 7 times and dumped her there.
Oh, really?
So as we started to work this case more and more, we started to develop information. So there was a female by the name of Gibson, and her aunt was a court reporter. She kept calling all the time, hey, you know what, you really gotta look at Corey Lloyd. I think he's involved. I go, ma'am, we're looking at everything. Everything's on the table. I said, I can't tell you where we're at in our investigation. But I says, we're looking at everything. Mm-hmm. But we were already on to Corey. So we ended up getting the warrants. We got Ramey warrants right away, and we got search warrants. So I went out to Rialto.
Now, real quick, for the people listening and watching that don't know what a Ramey warrant is, what is that?
A Ramey warrant is an arrest warrant, and what it is, it's a probable cause arrest warrant. And it's when your case is not filed, but you go to a judge and you get a warrant so that you can arrest the person that you're going after until you get the case filed.
Right.
So we get the Ramey warrant. I come out to Rialto, and I go to where Lisa lives, and I says, hey, we're looking for Corey. And she says, well, he's down the street. And so I interview her, and I tell her, hey, listen, I says, the reason we're here, I says, is Corey is involved in your best friend's murder. So we do a ruse, and what a ruse is I had her call Corey and tell her the baby was sick and that she needed him to come home, take the baby to Kaiser. So while he's on the phone, he uses some profanity and tells her pretty much, F yourself, catch the bus B. And so I said, hey, well, we have guns, we'll travel, we'll go to him. So we packed up and we started heading down Lilac in Rialto. We get to a street called Green, and she points to, there he is right there. So we make a U-turn. He doesn't know who I am because I'm in a plane car. So Rialto pulls up and we take him down. So I remember going up to him, and I got out the car and I go, hey, Corey Lloyd, right? I go, you remember me? He goes, yeah. I says, hey, I got some good news and some bad news for you. I said, the good news is we know who killed Michelle. The bad news is it's you. So we hooked him up. I drove him back to Los Angeles. I put him in a holding tank and went to serve the search warrant on 98th Street. So when we got there, had the uniform officers hit the house. We had 2 suspects sleeping on guns in the bedroom, 17 years old. Mm-hmm. So we got him into custody, searched the house, found marijuana, found the actual crime scene. So we called SID out for serology to get everything. And then we had 1 suspect outstanding. Last name was Guzman. Right. So I went up to his house, talked to his mother, and I says, hey, listen. I says, your son's wanted for murder. And I says, I'm going to put this in the system. And I says, he needs to turn himself in within 2 hours or LAPD is going to be rolling on him and the sheriffs, whoever. And I says, it's a shoot to kill. Mm-hmm. So within probably an hour and a half, he turned himself in. And so he in Norwalk. So I started interviewing these guys. And when I went to the autopsy of Michelle, she had the first stage of gonorrhea from the rape. So I'm talking to him, and he thinks he's all cool. He says, yeah, Michelle wanted me, but, my girlfriend burnt me. I go, what do you mean she burnt you? Well, I got gonorrhea. Bingo. So today, as we sit here relaxed in front of the courthouse, he's LWAP, which means he got life without the possibility of parole. And so did Corey. And then the 17-year-old is still in custody right now. He's at Averville. So that was my case. And one last thing, caveat. Corey Lloyd and Sugar Bear, which is Lopez, were also honorary pallbearers on the obituary.
What?
Yeah.
It's always something, man. Yeah, man. See, that was a pretty complex case. I mean, you had to run through a whole bunch of different hoops to get who you needed to get. I mean, you're all the way out in Kansas, right?
Out in Kansas.
Yeah. See, people think that things don't happen out in Kansas. Well, it's our people that go to Kansas. And there was an old song by I don't know if you guys follow rap, DJ Quick. And he did an old song, Just Like Compton. You were from Compton there, Fred, yep. He was talking about all the different spots. This is back when things first started popping out with the gang wars out here, and then how things started. People from LA started moving to other parts of the country, St. Louis, Kansas, yeah. He said, now Kansas is just like Compton. Yeah, he would go through all these stories of different places that he went to on tour, and he was like, man, I thought it was supposed to be, clean over here. Yeah, nah, they popping off over here in St. Louis too. So yeah, man, that's real interesting. Fred, why don't you tell us about a story that you had to investigate there?
Let me see. 1997, I got a call of a murder that happened at El Segundo and Central at a gas station. 11-year-old girl. Her and her father were on the way to a cheerleading match. She was a cheerleader. He was taking her there. He had to stop and get gas. He was wearing a pair of blue sneakers. And as he's putting gas in his car, these blood gang members just happened to be coming from a funeral for one of their fellow gang members. And one of the cars pulls out from the line of cars going down Rosecrans, going down Central rather. Pulls into the gas station, and one of the guys get out of the car, shoots the little girl's father in the head in front of her, kills him. He gets back in the car takes off, and somebody just happened to get a partial license plate number of the car. We ended up tracking down the car. It was registered to a girl that lived in Los Angeles area, in the Lawndale area, and she happened to date a blood gang member. Turns out that he was the driver, and the shooter. We got a call from an informant, gave us a nickname. We tracked the nickname down using the Cal Gang system, and found him way over in Pasadena, hiding at a girlfriend's house. We did a search warrant at the house, ended up arresting him, and he had the murder weapon underneath his mattress. But that's one that stands out because this little girl saw her father get murdered right in front of her, and
wow.
It was horrifying. It was to have to talk to her, interview her, and tell her mother what happened.
Yeah. Hey guys out there, real quick before we move on, man, we are live. We are out here in the city of Riverside, so whatever you hear there is actually going on right now. You heard that motorcycle, I'm sure. But I think the comments aren't coming through. I'm going to continue to work on that as we go with the show. But keep those comments going. They will show up at least in the replay. And if we can get them on, I will get on my phone and try to at least answer your questions here that way. But for some reason, we're not getting the comments linked up to the system here. But hey, like I said, we are live, we are on the streets, and we are doing this. So, Hey, so I remember listening to a podcast you did, Fred, and you were talking about when you were in Compton, a couple of the officers over there that were murdered in a situation that kind of maybe sparked your drive, your interest in the homicide. You mind talking about that case real quick?
Burrell and Nadano. Yeah.
Yep.
In February 22nd, 1993, I was assigned as the leader of a little task force that the watch commander put together because there had been a recent increase in gang-related shootings and murders in the city. So our job was just to go out and hit all the hot spots, respond to radio calls of gang members congregating and shots fired, and we ended up doing that all night. Arrested a couple of people, gang members, for shootings, and toward the end of the shift, I decided to get off early because the calls for service had quieted down, and I wanted to get off and go see a friend of mine, and Burrell and McDonald and one of the other units, they decided to go and get something to eat instead of getting off early. And while I was in the locker room about to change, the dispatcher put out a call of shots fired and an officer down. And, you know, I had never heard that before, a call like that. And I had been working as a cop by that time, probably 7 years. So I knew it was a real serious deal. So I started getting dressed again, ran upstairs, and we started, I was with a trainee at the time. So we jumped in the car and we started going toward the area where the call came from. It was Rosecrans and Dwight. And when I got there, officers Burrell and McDonald, they were dead in the street. You know, it stayed with me for a while. It almost destroyed me because they were not only my friends. You know, I mean, they were my friends, but they were my coworkers. And you know, even now, it's difficult for me to talk about it. And when, you know, I wrote about it after I retired, and that was the only way that I was able to finally come to terms with what happened that night. And it was really traumatic, and it affects me to this day. Even every time I hear a call of a cop getting shot, or you know, a cop being involved in a shooting, I think about that night. And you know, like I said, it was truly devastating to me.
Man,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, that's terrible to have to live through the death of somebody that you know, and then to just roll up. You know, I've had situations like that myself. Nobody on duty, but you know, officers that you know I've known died at the hand of a gun. So, and none of that is good. And I'm glad you made it to the other side, though.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know, the caveat on his, I remember that vividly. I was working homicide then. And we had Detective Limos and Zambos that came out to help assist Compton with this murder. And our linkage to that is the suspect's name is Regis Thomas. Regis did a murder in Nixon Gardens housing. And so we had a detective already looking at him for that. And so what happened when that murderer went down, they got right on it. And then a good friend of mine named Gary Washington actually brought the murder weapon back, working undercover. So he got Regis in custody. Yeah, so that was horrible.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it was McDonald's last night, right? Because he had got hired from an agency.
Yeah, he was a reserve,
Right.
and it was his second to last night.
Yeah.
Working, and he was going to go and be a regular officer up north. So, yeah, it was Regis Thomas. He was a bounty hunter from Nixon Gardens, and you know, he's a real bad dude.
Yeah.
Real bad dude. So, as a matter of fact, he eventually was convicted of the murders of Burrell and McDonald, and also the murder that you guys
In
were
Nixon,
working.
yeah.
So he got convicted of the 3 murders, and he's on death row
Well, good.
right
Well,
now.
good.
Yeah.
Good riddance on that. Good riddance. It's always terrible to hear about an officer that loses their life right before they're about to transition either on to retirement or to another job or what have you. And then there was an officer Palm Springs not that long ago, a couple years ago, that was out working an overtime shift, you know, before he was about to retire, and then, you know, got met with gunfire on a domestic or some sort of call that they rolled up to the door, and he was lying in wait. The suspect was lying in wait, and he killed him and his partner, female partner over there at Palm Springs. So, yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah, I mean that's terrible when you hear these things. And
Matter of fact, the Palm Springs police chief was a former Compton officer.
okay,
And he
is
just
that
retired
was
now.
that Reyes or?
Yeah, Reyes.
Yeah.
Worked for Compton.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, I mean it's terrible. I mean these are the realities of our jobs. You two got out mostly intact, right? I mean none of us are always intact. Yeah. I mean, you know, there's always, you know, my neck is hurting me right now. I'm sure you guys have some issues as well.
Nothing at a good glass of tequila though.
For real. Let me tell you, after we done with this live, yeah, let's go hit that. Let's go hit that. So we were talking about some pretty, difficult cases. How about one of those cases that are real open and shut? You just rolled up and you say, yo, he did it. And it was real open and shut, real quick. They confessed and you didn't have to do nothing. You closed it within 48 hours. Any of those stories?
Well, we call those smoking guns
Right.
or dripping knife. And basically, suspects at the scene, officers are on the spot, they get right there. I remember I had one where there was a domestic dispute. And we pulled up off of Harvard, and this female had stabbed her parolee boyfriend in the chest. So we got there, they were taking her into custody. They had taken him to Centinela Hospital. So I remember rolling over there because you have to look at the body to find out where the wound's at and kind of get everything ready before the post. So I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this guy's body and I'm seeing where he stabbed at and everything. And all of a sudden I feel these eyes on me. So the nurse let his brother in, who's a gangster. And so it was just me in there. And so I had to think real fast on my feet. I go, hey man, normally we don't do this, but I'm gonna let you look at your brother, kind of say your goodbyes, man, but you only got 2 minutes. And I was hot. So I went out and told the nurse, don't ever do that again. So we ended up taking the female into custody, and said that she was a victim of domestic abuse. There was no reports. She never called. Nobody called for her. So they ended up booking her for manslaughter. Which was kind of sad because I believed that she was abused, but there was no documentation.
Yeah. Go ahead, Fred.
I'm with him. Most of the smoking guns are domestics.
Right.
So I'm gonna tell you, if you're a husband, you think about killing your wife, don't do it because you're going to jail.
Right.
And that goes for the women too.
For real. For real.
Sides. You're going to jail. Most
Yep.
of the domestics are smoking guns.
Yep.
But I did have one. It was Thanksgiving one year. Night before Thanksgiving, we got a call, and we get out. Guys on the kitchen floor with a huge carving knife sticking out of his chest. Right. We walk in there, and it's like, the sister, she's sitting at the table, right? Patrol officers were asking the patrol officers, why is she sitting at the table? Well, she said she killed him. So we pull her out, we pull her into the next room, interview her. What happened? Why'd you kill him? And she says, excuse my language, she says, this motherfucker, he sold the butterball for crack. So what had happened, she had got up to get the turkey ready for dinner the next day, and it was missing. And she asked him, what happened to the turkey? And, she found out that he sold it for $25 worth of crack. So
Yeah.
she grabbed the carving knife. Instead of carving the turkey, she carved him up.
Yeah, Thanksgiving's coming up real soon here. Yeah, yep, in 3-4 weeks here. So if you're thinking about selling that butterball for crack or whatever, don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah. That's not unusual.
Not my turkey. Not my turkey.
Yeah, that's just not unusual. Different kind of murders. I've seen a guy kill a guy over a rib. And I mean, so suspects, they'll do things that just boggles the mind. You're like, really? Over $5, over beer,
Yep.
over a cigarette.
You laughing at me.
Yeah.
Yep. You said over a rib. You remind me what was that? I'm gonna get you sucker, whatever. Chris Rock.
Yeah.
How much for one rib?
75 cents. So, which brings me to another homicide that we had that was pretty interesting. There was a kid, and you probably remember this. He died in custody at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall, and it was at the hands of another.
Okay.
So they were going to be burying him, and he was from a particular East Coast gang in Los Angeles, and they were holding a funeral in another Crip gangs area, Broadway Gangster Crips. So Channel 4 was there covering this thing because of the notoriety, and the Gucci was the corner at the time. He was the one that determined it was at the hands of another. So while the funeral's going on, all these Crips show up, and one guy has on powder blue sweatshirt, powder blue hat, and powder blue gloves. I mean, he was very distinctive. He was the only one dressed like that. So at some point, my victim was named Vernon Lincoln. He was a Broadway gangster. So they disrespected each other. And so this was disrespect. The guy from East Coast said, "What's up, bubblegum?" And the guy from Broadway Gangster Crips, "Nothing, cheese toast." And so you would think,
The hell?
for us, that would be like, okay, no big deal.
Right.
Well, the guy from East Coast pulls out a gun, which is being filmed by Channel 4, runs around, shoots this guy in the head, kills him right there. So we look at this thing, call a gang unit up from Southeast, and they look at it and they go, "Hey, this guy is so-and-so." Remember his last name was Glenn, juvenile. So as we enter this thing, we're doing the crime scene and getting everything processed. We're probably about 4 hours into this, get a search warrant signed, and we go to his mother's house. So we take this knucklehead into custody, and he's all confident. He goes, "Well, you guys don't have the gun." So we got his clothing, and everything. So the killer we showed his mother this video. It says, "Man, I want to show you this video." I go, "Who is this?" "Oh, that's my son." "Oh, yeah, he's at the funeral." And then we pan and we show when he's chasing the guy with the gun. I go, "Man, who is that?" "That's my son." "With the gun in his hand?" Yeah, that's your son.
That's your son.
He pled guilty.
Yeah. I would think so. Yeah, that's a smoking gun.
Yeah.
Smoking gun right there on video. Hey, but remember from Rodney King, just because you got it on video, don't mean that you're gonna get a conviction. So, have all your ducks on the row as far as the evidence, and you did all the steps. So, in your investigation, you did it completely. I got a couple comments here. I'm bringing these up on the phone now, so please continue to bring in your comments. We're not able to show them, but I can still read your comment. And Vivi V on Facebook asks, how have you dealt with vicarious trauma? Vicarious trauma. So I would assume that's just trauma that you've had to deal with in your own investigations in your life, and you seeing things. How have you had to deal with trauma and seeing multiple homicides or kids being killed or anything like that? How have you had to deal with that?
Well, there's a thing called mission before emotion. And so basically, homicide is not for everybody.
No.
And I said, it's a rare breed of detectives that can work that, because it's not. And the way that I look at it is the body is evidence. So the body is telling me what happened to it. And then I'm trying to find out who did it, why, and we need to go get them. And yes, I think the only time that I was affected is when there was a kid that was murdered, because that's or a police officer.
Yeah.
Those are really touching for me, because I always think about police officers as myself. This guy had plans, or this female had plans, and they're dead now. They had a family at home, and they were killed for nothing more than doing their job.
Yeah.
And then you see innocent victims that are gunned down, and you try to ask why. And so that kind of impacts you. I remember I would come home and kind of hold my kids a little close to me, especially when the kid was killed, because that's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Agreed. Those you can be a homicide investigator for years, and those will still affect you. The child murders and the quote unquote innocent murders. But one thing that always got me when you talk about vicarious trauma, it was the death notifications.
Oh yeah.
You never get over the death notifications, and there's never an easy way to do it.
Absolutely.
It's, to me, that was the hardest thing, and it still affects me to this day. Having to tell some poor woman that her 14-year-old son was murdered, or that her 12-year-old daughter was found strangled to death. The emotional reaction that you get from that person when you give them that news, it stays with you.
Yeah.
Just like seeing the victim at a scene. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree 100%. That is probably the hardest thing of my job as a homicide detective. And you learn. You got to have good interpersonal skills. I remember my first death notification. I went to a house and knocked on the door. And the mistake I made is when the person answered the door, I said, "Hey, I'm Detective Landrum from South Bureau Homicide." shouldn't have said homicide. And so when I came in and you're trying to get information to see, tell them about their loved one, and and in this particular case, it was a mother, and she was there by herself. And you don't want to make notifications like that. You want to make sure somebody's with them, and then you want to try to get as much information as you can, and then you kind of let them know what's going on.
Yeah.
And then tell them about victim services, and different things that they need to kind of help them get through this, because it is traumatic. You tell somebody that their loved one is shot and killed or laying over here in the street.
Yeah.
And you still have to maintain that decorum and to maintain the profession of what you're doing, what you're trying to solve, right? You're trying to solve this murder. And this person that you're talking to very well could be the suspect. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you're also watching for reactions,
Right.
While also trying to be, as consoling as possible.
Yeah.
So that's one of the more difficult things.
Now, since we're on the subject of reactions, let's talk about interrogations and tactics and strategies that you guys use as investigators in homicide investigations. I know one thing that we've always heard when, say, like a husband who murdered his wife, or vice versa, when they talk about the person in the past tense, when the person is just missing.
Right.
Yeah, that's one of those red flags, because the only person that would think that they're dead, they're actually gone, is the person that did it. So what are some other things that you guys can that come to mind that are like red flags to you during investigations?
Suspects that are sleeping in interrogation rooms while they're waiting for you to come talk to them.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Fake
tears.
Fake tears. Yep. Yeah. No doubt.
And a lot of times what we look at is from financial perspective. You want to see if there's an insurance policy, what's going on here. Was there a pending divorce? Was there a restraining order? There's different things you want to look at and see what's happening.
Yeah, no doubt. Another comment on Facebook from Beverly. She says, what kind of mental wellness support is provided for officers that have to deal with these sorts of things?
Well, with LAPD, they have a behavioral sciences section. Mm-hmm. And so if somebody needs, some kind of counseling, or if we can spot somebody that's not doing well in that position, then we try to pull them aside and try to get them some help and probably pull them out of there, because that's not a good place to be, because you got to maintain a healthy lifestyle working homicide. A lot of people, they just work homicide, they don't work out, and they just back and forth, court, drinking, eating bad, and those kind of things kind of fester. And then all they're thinking about is just murder and victims and stuff, and that's not healthy. You got to have something outside of there, church, some kind of sports, family connection. You got to do something, a hobby.
That's an outstanding point. You do have to have something that keeps you centered. I retired in 2017. I had a heart attack in 2020. Almost died. I didn't know just how much I was bottling things up inside of myself while I worked, because to me it was, the end goal every day was trying to find out who took someone's loved one away.
Yeah.
And you get caught up in that. And whoever asked that question about the wellness, that's a great question, because we started a long time ago. He started 83, I started 85. Back then there was not they didn't have stuff like that for us. No. You know what I mean?
Nope.
They've gotten a lot better in recent years, and now they have psychologists that you can talk to. They have wellness units that you can talk to. It's up to us as individuals to look out for each other. And if you see one of your colleagues that's not doing well, you need to go talk to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because this profession it's like, we're tough guys and tough girls. We can get through it. We don't need to talk to anyone. Well, that's not true. And it took me almost dying to find out that just how true that was.
No doubt.
Yeah, you definitely have to have somebody to bounce it off of, because you see a lot. I remember my first murder that I handled was Michelle Helford. And I remember going down to 1104 North Mission Road, which is the county coroner's office. And I'll never forget that day, both rooms were open. And on each slab was a female. I'll never forget that. And it's surreal because they're in different stages of autopsy. It looks like it's just like a movie. And you're looking at that. And when you're going in, you get desensitized because your brain is saying the body's evidence, and I'm trying to find out what happened to it, what killed them, and so that you can go back and prosecute people. Now, I've had murders where a guy is shot up by 2 different caliber guns. And believe it or not, we'll get both suspects in the custody, and the DA will file murder charges on one guy and assault with a deadly weapon on the other guy, even though the guy's dead, because they're saying that this guy's rounds weren't fatal. So it's interesting.
Yeah, that's real interesting. And I wanted to talk about that too, about the prosecution phase. What do you guys do to, well, first of all, communication with the survivors, with the victims' families? What sort of communication do you guys do with the victims' families as far as an investigator goes? And then once the trial gets started, do you guys, kind of handhold them through the process as well? How does that prosecution phase work for you guys?
It never ends, right? I compare it to this. When you're a patrol officer, at the end of your shift, it's all done, right? You go home, the next day you start all over again. And whatever happens the next day, it's a new adventure, right? When you're a homicide investigator, or any kind of detective for that matter, the victims, relatives, they stay with you forever. You have to communicate with them.
Right.
The district attorney's office, you have to communicate with the DAs. You have to have a good rapport with the DAs, because just because you arrest someone and file the case doesn't end there. The case doesn't end until after the appeals have been exhausted, right. To be perfectly honest with you. It doesn't even end once you get a guilty verdict, because appeals come up and the DA might call you to help you do something, to ask you to help him or her do something else on the case. So your involvement with a case never ends. I get calls even now, to this day, and I've been retired for 5 years now, from DAs asking me about certain things on cases. I still maintain rapport with survivors of victims. The little girl, I had a case where, not the case where the cheerleader's dad was killed, but another case where a little girl saw her father murdered in the driveway of their house. I used to take her Christmas gifts after her dad was killed, because no one else, was there for her. So, not every homicide investigator does stuff like that, but some of us do. And I was one of the ones that try to maintain that kind of relationship.
Yeah, I think it's imperative that you maintain a good, close relationship with surviving victims and your witnesses, because those are the ones that are going to testify, and those are the ones that are hurting after the case is done. And like Fred said, you're absolutely right. You have to reach out to them and make sure that things are going that way. Now, I remember taking a breadwinner out of a home once for murder, and my partner and I, and we didn't have to do this, and I'm not, you talk about being humble, you be humble, but we went and brought the family groceries because we know they didn't have any groceries, and Dad's going to jail. So it's little things like that. So you kind of, it's like a balancing act here. But I agree with Fred that you have to maintain a close contact with your victims. You have to call and that's one thing I would do. I would always call my survivors and say, hey, listen, I just want you to know that the case is coming up. Do you need anything? Make sure that victim services is assisting them, because a lot of times they figure, well, I need money for rent, or we need food, or who's going to help us with counseling, because they have those services as well. Yeah. And so you want to make sure that you take care of your people instead of just leaving them out there. Okay, your loved one's gone, and that's that.
Yeah, move on to the next.
Those are the untold stories of the homicide investigators, the interactions that they have with the witnesses and the victim survivors. And it also takes a toll on your family, because you want these people to be able to contact you. So they might call you while you're off.
Right.
You know, and you have to have an understanding husband or wife that knows that this is part of the job, that this is, you know, this is just what it is, you know, and that's why a lot of marriages don't last in this profession, because sometimes the spouse can't deal with it.
Yeah, yeah. And another thing with homicides, your significant other's got to realize those calls that you may be getting in the middle of the night, you know, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, you got to get up and go, because, you know, homicides don't happen on a 9 to 5, right?
Yeah.
They always come after you just
In the
lay down
watch.
to sleep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know at my agency, I work for a smaller agency, and our homicide detectives, they do a rotation, so they don't, like in the larger agencies, you can retire or die in a spot. But with us, you know, you rotate every 5 years and that. And I know a lot of those guys, they think it's a relief, you know, after working homicide for 4 or 5 years, you know, always answering the phone, 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, those long days and nights. So it's a little different. I'm sure at larger agencies you can request, you know, maybe to go to another division or another assignment. That's probably not looked on kindly, I'm sure, right? But
No, I think, homicide it's a calling to work homicide.
yeah.
And I would say, Fred would probably agree with me, I would say 99.9% of the people assigned to homicide, they're there because they want to be there.
And it's hard to get there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they don't take just anybody. So when you get to homicide, you're doing something you're always doing good police work, but you're doing something that's very meaningful, and it's a task, a job for no boys at all, and men and women only. You know what I mean?
For real.
And so so you roll out there and you put on your adult clothing, and you go out there and you do your thing.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where everybody can't do it. I remember there was a point where they were assigning people to South Bureau Homicide, and people were like, I don't want to be here, because they just got promoted to detective and they put them in there, and those people didn't last long. They were out because that's a shock to the system. If you're not used to seeing blood and gore, and dead bodies and rolling out the calls, and you guys commented about the call outs. I was pretty smart with that, because what I did is whenever I was on call, since I was such a gentleman, I would put the phone on my wife's side of the bed. So when the phone rang at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, she would answer it. I have a notepad by the bed, and she says, "It's for you." You kidding? So I'd pick it up, and I would always sound like I'm talking like I've been up all day. Hey, yeah, okay, where's that? Where's it at? Okay, I'll be right there. Thanks a lot. She would get hot about that, but I always did that,
And for the younger viewers, we used to have phones in our houses.
Yeah. real phones, corded phones, right?
Phones.
Yeah.
Plugged
into the wall.
Plugged into the wall. Yep. Because that's when they had those laws that came out on those domestics, when pull the cord out the wall when the other half was trying to call 911. Yep. So, but now the same thing. They try to dial 911 on the phone, and the other half takes it and throws it, and same thing. But it started with our generations with cords and the action. Do you still have a corded phone in your house?
I do.
I do too. Yeah.
And I think most people from my generations do. I never use it. I don't even know what the number is, right? But I have it. But at my wife's insistence, we have one in the kitchen and we have one in our bedroom because of the 911 need.
That's exactly
right?
it.
Right.
Technology has gotten better where they can pinpoint you now, but originally it would go to CHP, and then CHP had to figure out where you were and transfer it to the agency. Well, if you just dial 911 on the landline, it goes straight to that agency. They know what address it is.
Absolutely.
So that's why I always tell the wife, hey, no, we keeping a landline. So it goes straight to dispatch.
Absolutely.
Yep. So real quick before we get out of here, we were going to talk about prosecutions. What about any prosecutions that didn't go so well, where a defendant got off on a technicality or something wasn't done right? You may not have been, the case agent on that, but you were involved in that case. If you guys can talk about any defendant that got off on a technicality or anything like
to be honest with you, I never had any cases like that.
No? Okay.
I mean, we, LA County, the DAs, because usually we go to hardcore gangs to file your cases because it was mainly gang cases. And they don't take a case unless you got, your I's dotted, your T's crossed.
Yep.
And and also if you had exculpatory evidence, you brought that forward and stuff like that. If you didn't hide anything, and so every time when we went there, I mean, we were dead set. We had our guy, or a person involved. So we were pretty good with that.
Right.
Agree. I mean, I supervised the case once where the guys that rode on the call, they didn't handle it appropriately, and because they didn't do their job well, the DA's office was reluctant to file, but they did eventually file, and the guy ended up taking a deal for far less time than he should have gotten.
Right.
For it. But,
yeah, that's another question I was going to ask.
Yeah.
You guys get mostly convictions that you think you should have gotten in your cases? I mean, I know nowadays in California at least, they're getting slaps on the wrist for even double homicides. I mean,
I think that back when we were in homicide and fast forward into now and then different crimes now, like, that certain things now are misdemeanors. And I'm not talking about homicide, but just certain things are misdemeanors now that were felonies back in the day.
Right.
And it's just how things have evolved and stuff with the the Prop 57s, the Prop 47s, and all these different realignment, these 1170 resentence a guy for certain things. So it's changed a lot, and then the enhancements are like in LA County, the enhancements are going away.
Right.
The gun allegations and gang allegations are gone now.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so those were the real hammers to put violent predators behind bars.
Yeah. Yep. And you were talking about the Prop 57, all those things that reduced a lot of crimes to misdemeanors that were able to be held in jail before or what have you. Not that they lowered felonies like murder or assault with a deadly weapon, but those cases where we were able to hold them before, now they're out on the street to be able to do something like commit a homicide or a robbery or something when they should have been inside. 3 strikes and all that stuff that was abused. I'm sure in some cases, but for the most part, these people knew, these suspects knew, I can't do this because it's going to be my 3rd strike.
Well, you're seeing a lot of that now. You're seeing San Francisco really brought it to light, but people are going in stores and specifically stealing. That's a burglary.
Oh yeah.
But they're not charging with that.
Nope.
They say, that's just theft. Because when you go in with a mindset to specifically steal in 4 walls, that's a burglary.
That's a felony. Yep.
But they're, you're getting guys arrested and then they're out of jail. Then they back there the next day, and I'm not exaggerating. They get arrested again, or they'll get cited out. They'll do it 3 or 4 times and stuff. So businesses are going out of business because of that.
Right.
And then you get the guys that should be in jail for certain things, and they get out. Then they end up doing a murder.
Yep. Yep.
Because I think we're losing sight of the fact that there are real monsters. I mean, it's Halloween today. There's real monsters out here among us. People that like committing violent crimes, people that like taking things from others. And I mean, most of them, they go in prison and they kill in prison. You know what I mean?
For real.
So there's some monsters out here, and we can't lose sight of that fact. There are some people that can be rehabilitated, no doubt. But there are some people that don't want to be rehabilitated.
That's an interesting point that you bring up, Fred, because one of my notes that I wrote was the same thing, that we walk amongst monsters.
Yes,
we walk amongst them right here. Mm-hmm. And this society in general is very violent. It is, I mean, when you look at murder scenes and you can see the hate that went into these killings and shootings and stabbings and overkills, I mean, you get a sense for that, and then you're actually going after a monster.
Yeah, no doubt. Yep. And as we wrap this up, I'm sure you guys have many of those stories in your individual memoirs. Well, why don't you tell the crowd? You can start out with you, Fred, about what you got here for us on the pod right here. Tell everybody about that.
When I retired, I wrote a book. It's called Black, White, and Gray All Over. A Black Man's Odyssey in Life and Law Enforcement. And it details my life, my career, all of the emotional trauma that went along with it. And I didn't pull any punches. I talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and warts and all are in this book. A lot of people weren't happy with some of the things that were in this book, but I was hardest on myself. So it's getting pretty good reviews, and this book was a large part of my healing after seeing all the death and destruction that I saw for 32 years. And
appreciate you for putting that out. Where can we find that?
It's on Amazon. You can get it on Barnes and Noble, at Target, and you can get it in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle.
No doubt. Throw that up there real quick. Hold that up for everybody there. Black, white, and was that black, white, and what?
Gray all over.
Gray all over. Yeah. Appreciate you on that. All right, Maurice, and you got a project as well?
Yeah. I decided, I was sitting back and kind of like Fred, I said, you know what, I want to kind of I want to chronicle my life and my time with the Los Angeles Police Department and the things, trials and tribulations that I went through and just the different things. So, and I wanted to leave a legacy for my children, because I never really talked about what I did for a living. I never talked about my shootings. I never talked about, things that I've been involved in. And so I too wrote a book, and my book is called Gangsters Narcotic Homicide, Protecting the Thin Blue Line. And this book is based on my career, my life. Everything in my book is true. And you'll see a lot of different things, and I'll just highlight some things without giving too much away. But I was at 39th and Dalton, the infamous search warrants. I was there for that. I worked the Olympics. I've been involved in a couple of shootings. I talk about a couple of homicides. One was Michelle Helford that we talked about earlier, but it's more in detail in the book. And then also I talk about another prolific serial killer that I was a part of investigating the murder of one of my victims. He ended up killing 8 females, and he's on death row currently right now in San Quentin. But I talk about that. His name is Michael Hughes. So that's all in this book, and it's a good, fast read. It's true. For you in law enforcement, if you read this book, this will bring you back to your roots. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You'll see it there. My book also, you can get it on BookBaby, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Kindle, and wherever they sell books, you can look it up and get it.
All right, and hold that up real quick again for the at the white camera right there. There you go. Okay. All right. So make sure you cop that.
It's a good stocking stuffer.
Exactly. Yeah, the holidays are coming up, ladies and gentlemen. So after Halloween, we got to get to it. So get to it. Halloween's today, and then after this is all speeding downhill. So get ready for them holidays. All right, gentlemen, I appreciate you coming on and letting us know a little bit about your lives, your careers, and about Homicide and how everybody can, read your books, get to your books, and learn a little bit more about you and what you guys have done. I appreciate your service. You guys be safe. I know, Frederick, you were talking about, you had a health scare there years ago. You remain healthy. I know you got your Adidas sweatsuit on there, so,
Get like you, man. Get like you.
Hey, I'm trying to get retired here. A few more years and I'm retired, so, I'm hanging in there. But, you guys look good. I appreciate you guys, and, we will do this again real soon. So thank you. And all right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Yes, my name is Dale. Man, that was fun, right? We do this, like I said, this is Black and Blue Street Life. We taking this out the studio here onto the street. My name is Dale. I hope you enjoyed all this. I am out of here. Yes, I'm out. Peace.
Every time I close my eyes, I see your smile in the morning light. And girl, every time I hear that song that we used to call our own, it all comes back again. I don't understand